In this mini lecture, we're going to talk about how to evaluate a speech in COM 101. So in addition to learning about the process of organizing and delivering your own speech, you're also going to be required to complete peer evaluations on the speeches, or at least some of the speeches, of your classmates. So you should learn a little bit about how to do that. Now, we have established that the audience is the most crucial piece of the speech process, and that audience members will provide feedback throughout the speech as well as following the speech. So you may be asking yourself, why do I need to complete peer evaluations? Isn't it bad enough that I need to actually deliver my own speech? Well, it's not uncommon for students to feel uncomfortable providing peer feedback about another student's speech. And I have often had students say to me that they don't feel comfortable critiquing another speech since they feel that they did not do well with their own speech. And what I always say back to them is that when done correctly, peer evaluations help the speaker and also help the evaluator. So when completing peer evaluations, a tool that's going to be helpful for you to reflect on, and again, it's going to help when creating your own speech as well as providing evaluations for other people's speeches, is the rubric that I use to evaluate your speech that you have already hopefully taken a look at. And the framework of that rubric provides a guideline for what you should be thinking about when completing a peer evaluation. So if you recall, the rubric is broken down into 5 areas: the introduction, body, conclusion, delivery, and overall effectiveness. So let's take a look at each one of those 5 areas in a little more detail. Okay, first, the introduction. We know that the introduction has 4 parts: an attention getter, some attempt to establish audience relevance, speaker credibility, the thesis or the preview of the speech, and then also you want to transition to the first main point. So for the attention getter, did the speaker do something to gain your attention? Was it attempted? Did they do kind of an average job? Or was it something that really captured the audience's attention? Did the speaker attempt to connect the speech topic that they chose to the audience? Why should the audience care about this particular topic? How is it relevant to them? Did the speaker establish their own credibility through perhaps a personal connection to the topic, as well as perhaps identifying why they're credible to speak about the topic? Maybe they've done some research, maybe they've taken a class, maybe it's something they've always been interested in. Did the speaker clearly preview the main points of the speech? This sets the stage for the speech and helps the audience know what it is they're going to be listening for. And finally, was there a transition to the first main point? Do we know that the speaker has moved from the introduction of their speech into the body by indicating that first main point? Okay, so that's the pieces of the introduction. Let's take a look at the pieces of the body. We know that a body has main points as well as subpoints. So you want to think about, could you figure out what the main points were? If you couldn't figure that out, that's a problem, and you want to let the speaker know about that. Were the subpoints, did they contain enough information to support the main points? Were they relevant to the main points? Were there areas where you're like, well, I think I would have liked to have known a little bit more about that, or, oh gosh, you gave me so much detail I couldn't even really follow what you were saying? Were sources orally cited in the speech? Remember that oral citations should contain enough information so that as a listener, you can determine exactly where the information was obtained, as well as understand if that information seems to be credible. If a speaker just said, according to a website, that would not be a good oral citation. If they said, according to WebMD, getting a little closer, but still not quite enough information. If they said, according to an article about the flu that I found on WebMD that was written by Dr. Joel Smith, now we've got enough information. And by Dr. Joel Smith also helps to establish the credibility of that information. Transitions. We've identified that transitions are critical to help guide the audience through the speech, not only within the main points, but also using internal summaries or internal previews. I've talked to you now about the different types of bananas. Now let's take a look at some of the benefits that you can gain from eating bananas. That provides a little bit of a summary as well as tells us where we're going next. How about the visual aid? Did it contain too much information? Did it help guide us? Was I distracted by the visual aid? Or did it really support the speaker's message and help to reinforce those main ideas? And finally, the audience adaptation. Was the language appropriate? Were unknown words explained well? Did it seem like the speaker really was thinking about the needs of the audience as they developed and were delivering their speech? Okay, so we've covered the introduction, we've covered the body. Let's take a look at the conclusion. One, we need to know, was there some transition to the conclusion? Did we know that the speaker was coming to the end of their speech? Did they provide a nice summary of the main points that reinforced the main message of their speech? Not just listing them again, but maybe even going into a little more detail. And finally, was there some way that the speaker had made some attempt to have a memorable closer? We knew that this was it. This was the last thing they were going to say in their speech. Okay, so that contains pretty much the content of the speech. Now let's take a look at the delivery. Was the speech extemporaneous? Remember, there are different types of speeches, and all of the speeches in this course should be delivered extemporaneously. Just to remind you, that's a speech that is delivered, it is prepared ahead of time, it is delivered by using a delivery outline. If you were to give the speech 10 times, your wording might be a little bit different, but your main points and the substance of the speech would be the same. Was that done? Vocal delivery. Was there some vocal variety, or did the speaker speak in a very monotone voice and didn't have much inflection? Was their volume good? Was their rate good? Did they speak too quickly? Did they speak too slowly? For nonverbal delivery, and admittedly this is a little challenging in a virtual class, but did it seem like their posture was good? Were they not slumping over? Were they not swaying back and forth? Was there anything non-verbally that was happening that was maybe a distraction to the overall speech message? And finally, eye contact. Was there attempts to make good eye contact to keep the audience engaged? Maybe looking around if you were in a room, looking around the room a bit, and trying to make good eye contact, which helps to keep the audience engaged. The last area that we're going to look at is the overall effectiveness of the speech. The speech topic. Was it a good topic? Even if it was a topic that you weren't particularly interested in, did the speaker do something to adapt that topic to the audience? The purpose. For an informative speech, was it a clearly informative speech? For a persuasive speech, were there elements of persuasion that were in place that the purpose was absolutely understood? How about the organization? Could you follow along? Did it seem like it was a good organization for that particular speech topic? And finally, time. Did they stay within the time limits that were designated for that speech? So when giving feedback, we want to be descriptive. We don't want to generalize or personally attack the speaker. We don't want to say, you stink, your topic was horrible. And finally, we want to make sure that we praise when it's appropriate to do so. So we want to comment on some areas that need improvement, as well as some areas that went well. So what do I mean by describing feedback? When we describe, we're commenting on specific behaviors of another without using critical language. For example, your main points were unclear. Stronger transitions could have helped me follow your speech better. Or, I liked your topic, but it was difficult to stay engaged because you did not have much eye contact. So you're pointing out an area that maybe needs some work, but doing it in a way that is respectful to the speaker and offering some suggestion about what they could do to maybe make that a little bit better. When offering praise, you want to provide feedback that is also going to be descriptive. So, for example, you had good eye contact, which helped me stay more engaged with your speech. Or you had good supporting material for your speech. Again, we want to be descriptive and give some solid advice and suggestions for specific behaviors or changes that could be made or continued as the speaker moves through the class. So the formula for feedback is 1, identification of specific behaviors or issues that could use some level of improvement, plus praise of specific behaviors or a portion of the speech that was done well, equals appropriate feedback in COM 101. When done correctly, remember, a peer evaluation helps the speaker, but it also helps you as an evaluator. And hopefully, as you listen to these speeches, you'll be thinking about something that somebody else did well, or maybe something that they didn't do well, and then taking that information and adapting that then to your own experience with delivering and composing a speech.